Hello everyone. Um, Welcome to the next stream where I'll be continuing to create a collision combat system in the project that we are doing on these streams. Um, it's actually late, I mean it's already night, but I can't sleep, so I decided to jump right on the stream and just do something, because why not? Alright, so let's quickly pick up what has been done in the previous streams. So I think I'll just hit play, see what happens. That's always the best way to check. I remember I was able to move, but right now I'm not. So something is broken. Let's check. Player animation. It's missing the input component, so let's add one. Player input. Alright. Okay, so it's moving. Alright, let's look at the code. Okay. So, as the title says, today I'll be adding the combat system based on the colliders. Because right now we have some, I'd say, I don't know, basics, some roots for the combat system, which are placed in the character health component, in the character attack component, which basically controls when our character is able to attack the next time and whether it should perform the attack. And we have the system for attacking, which is character perform attack system. So I think we'll be mostly working on these two. So instead of just finding the closest enemy, as it is done right now, and applying the damage, we'll be trying to play animation. And if any character collides with our weapon collider, it should take damage. So I think it's time for creating another entity, which will be weapon. Okay. So, because we're in CS, we won't be creating like weapon component. I mean, it would be the easiest way, but we can do it better, I think. So I'm thinking about creating a component, apply damage component on collision or something like that. So damage applier, damage dealer. Oh, I think this name is great. So we have character components here, and right now we just need some component to create a weapon entity. Alright, but let's start by just modifying the prefab to contain a weapon model. So you can attach the component to a real object, not to some other thing. And maybe the next step would be just to animate the animate our character while pressing the attack button. So he animates with the attack animation, and the weapon moves along his hand. And later on we can build other things on top of that. Alright, so let's get going. First of all, I see that this the player is a prefab somewhere, which is not good, because I wouldn't like to modify any prefabs out there. So I think I'll just break the unlock prefab. Alright. Right now we have only the model and some game objects serving for the bones of our character. So I have another model here, I'll just delete it. Alright. So let's find weapon model. It won't be there. Maybe it's in the polygon starter, the pack that we are using mainly for everything out here. Oh, there it is. We got something. It's also a prefab. I don't want it to be a prefab. It's a prefab? Yeah, it's a prefab. Unlock prefab. Let's call it weapon. Weapon. Alright. So we can do it in two ways. So the first one would be to simply put the weapon game object into the one of the hands of our character player. And the second one would be to do it through scripts. And then our weapon entity is like a bit independent from what we've got here. So we're kind of forcing the weapon to be picked up by the player, not just trusting that it's somewhere inside of the player game object. And we are trying to avoid game objects as we are doing it in the ECS. So yeah, I think let's do it by scripts. Okay. So then we need some component in the character to describe that it just handing some is holding some weapon. That's tricky, just a bit tricky. Oh, I know. Let's create a component, character weapon hand. Oh, not TS. I was just programming in TypeScript. I'm a bit used to just typing TS at the end of the file. Alright, class character weapon hand. And it means that we have our character is capable of wielding a weapon because it has a weapon hand, and we need to store the transform of the hand. I think that would be the most straightforward way to do it. Well, so using Unity engine, public transform, hand transform, and now we need the reference for the weapon that we are holding. Let's make it more generic. So character hand. So character hand can hold something and can be also transform. Hold object transform. so it can hold any object. And by saying object, I mean not the object in the code. I mean just real world objects. So it could be a weapon, and later on it could be just some other stuff. Yeah, I don't know, some keys, some potions, anything, barely anything. So character hand and held object transform. And we need a system that would assign the position of the hand transform to the held object transform. So it would be like move character hand held object system. I think it's quite good enough name for that system. I need to just create some more advanced name. So we'll just copy that one. All right. Alright, so I want to iterate for each entities that have the character hand I've done it just like that. Okay, and here character hand what's wrong? Oh, entities for each. Alright. So what we are just doing is just taking the character hand and it should be character hand, but it's displaying me some weird stuff. What I'm doing wrong for each? That's weird. Is it working here? From it's working. Well, I don't know. Let's move forward. Hand transform and held object transform. Hand transform, held object transform. Position, we're assigning for character hand, and hand transform position. Okay, and now some nameless refactoring. So it's not the hand transfer. I mean, it should be the hand holding point transform. So we can just type holding point transform, held object transform. Okay, and as the character hand held object can be null, we're doing nothing in this case. Alright, so let's get back to Unity. Well, as here, we are storing the transform reference. I think this is okay since we're just taking something from the animation that is done through the classic game object approach for the animator. So it's not in ECS. I think it's quite good enough to store the transform here, but I'm not sure about this held object transform. I have a feeling that it should be an entity reference, but I don't know if it's alright to store the entity references in the components. I mean, well, I know, but maybe it's just right. What's the? Can you access the entity somewhere? Here, not entities. Get entity. No. Let's try to find out whether we can just store it as the entity. So not here. We get entity, query, component data from entity. Let's try to find it on the web. So, into entities. Creating entities, components, system accessing keying the entity data. Using component system. Let's maybe check the scripting API. But it would be much more faster. Entity, yeah. Entity manager. Buffer. Get. Entity only archetype. Instantiate. Log chunk. Move entities from. Get entity from component. Get entity by component. Components do not get attached to entities, but entities do get attached to components. Okay. Entity is not attached to a component, but is implicitly attached to a set of components. Can get corresponding entity with entity array. Alright, so based on that, I don't think it's a good idea to store any references at all, which makes this whole thing a lot harder. Let's maybe just check into ECS store, maybe ECS component reference, keeping reference to entities in an entity. Entity ref, public entity value. Hmm. Component data from entity. You can pass this to the job Excel portal, turn entity into data T. It supports modifying and save the data back to. Hmm. Is to add components to entities that receive the. Okay, but this is about the events. Alright. Context generations, component data from entity. Okay, so let's check the ECS physics. I mean, it's some open source physics out here. Let's check the components. Maybe we'll find something here. Some rigid body, colliders, full of rigid body. Yeah. Entity. And this repository. All right. Public entity, rigid body entity. Alright, so to get the entity at the time of the creation of the entity, you have to store it. I mean, it makes sense when you think that this assumption over here, where was that? Entity is not attached to a component, but it's attached to a set of components. So it makes sense. Because when you want to have this attachment, this relationship, you do it manually. Let's check out some samples. And this is an ID. Archetype is a unique array of component type. Okay, so archetypes, unique array of component type. So archetype is a kind of like way to group your entities into players, enemies. Did I get it right? Owns entity data, entity archetypes. That's not bold. Well, shared component state and component group. Oh, there's some like shared component data. So yeah, okay. Alright, so when I have the component, cannot be sure that it is can't store a reference to the components. So it's like we need to have here the entity. So held object, let's call it like that. And instead of character hand, character hand, or maybe holding point transfer held object. That would be good. So character count, if held object is null, we're doing nothing, but if is something, can we make sure that this held object contains some components? Maybe the archetype is a way to go. So let's check ECS archetypes. Archetypes group. It's an identifier to each unique combination of the components types. So you can create a random either directly or implicitly. You can create archetypes directly using add or remove a component from an entity. It's an immutable singleton with an archetype with the same set of objects, either directly or implicitly. So let's say archetype for a given entity. Oh, okay. It's not a way to go. Alright, archetypes. This is auto rank. Right, so let's check into ECS. Entity reference. Give reference to entity. Equals the string. Okay, so move character handheld object system. Alright, so I think we'll just do it like a held object transform, get component, data from entity. But I would like to have character hand, get component data from what? Component system base. What's that? Oh, it's just from Unity Engine, never mind. Component. Oh, and here we need to add the Oh, I know why it wasn't working. Need to add the hybrid component base class. Hybrid component, and here and code object. Maybe entity manager. Get component object. So we need to use that. And we want to transform from the character hand called object. Okay. Alright. Object and holding point transform quotation, and we'll call it transform character hand called object system. And we need to make sure it's not null. I wonder how efficient is that. I mean, doing get component on the game object is pretty expensive, and I wonder, is it expensive to do entity manager get component object? Very curious about that, but we'll see. So let's check. I mean, are we able to check, or we're not? So character hand, yeah, we're not able to check it directly. Let's assign the, oh, what's that? Let's assign the hand, upper leg spine, so it's hands, thumb, and let's just create the holding point. Alright. Holding points. And maybe adjust it just a bit. Alright. It's here. That's safe. And now somehow we need to put that here. I'll check whether it's possible to unity get entity from game object entity. That's interesting. But we're using this hybrid entity. We have access for it here. Copy all components to entity. All right. Or is it possible to, in the debug, to see the value or change the value of the identifier and file? I think it's not possible. Hmm. I'm wondering if whether maybe we should just use the game object instead of the entity reference here, but maybe let's do it like that. First of all, I want it to be public entity and get private set. Okay. And later on, let's turn on first awake or enable game object life cycle order of execution. So awake on enable. Okay, that's perfect. Temp assign weapon entity ECS. Right, so it will just temp assign weapon entity, and at start, I mean, we're taking two things, character hand, and we're taking some transform, or maybe not transform, and hybrid entity. Called object. Okay, and we're doing like hand held object is equal to held object entity. And it's a temporary solution for assigning the entity to character hands component. And later on, most probably we'll be setting up all of our entities using the scripts. I mean, all the references, or maybe not. I mean, it would be so much harder in terms of like we want to create something in the scene and create some relationship between the entities. So at the beginning we would like to have two entities to have the reference to each other, and we won't be able to do that on the scene editor, and that would be not good, and that would be annoying. So maybe we can come up with some property drawer, I mean some or custom data type like entity ref. And this entity ref would implicitly accept the... Yeah, I know what we can do. Yeah. So, hybrids entity ref.cs, which would be a simple structure holding two things, I mean with two properties. The first one would be the entity. I mean, good job. Yeah, you're here. The first one would be entity, and the second one would be a hybrid entity. Right. So this is our hybrid entity ref. And perfectly, we would like to how can we access the, so let's create the public entity value get. So if entity isn't null, then return the entity, otherwise assign the entity from hybrid entity. I'm going to do it like that. So if entity is null, then return the hybrid entity. We can create a constructor like that, hybrid entity ref, entity. So we're assigning it like that. This entity. Hybrid entity must be, and the hybrid entity is null. And we're making it read only. Can we write like that? Yeah, we can. So it will be private. Entity value, if entity is null, then assign the entity from hybrid entity and return it. Return entity. Yep. And hybrid is null. Alright. So how it will work. When we are assigning some reference inside of the runtime, so for our system, our code, we're creating a new instance of the hybrid entity reference by passing the entity, and it creates a structure that just returns that entity. But while we're using that in the editor, I'll just create a second property drawer that would allow us to drag the hybrid entity, just like we do with game objects. And in the runtime, when the code executes, when we access the value, it will just return the entity from the hybrid entity. So it will work pretty well. Alright, so I think we solved this issue out here. One more thing, I would like to have a public static implicit operator, static entity operator, which would just return entity ref. Did the reference change? What's that? I don't know. Entity ref. This. Something like that. That's a color because it's more. How to write the conversion? C# conversion implicit. Right. Operator. Static implicit operator. Oh, okay. So like we write it like that. So implicit operator. We are not forced to explicitly say we're casting from the entity, and it goes from the second side. So fallback static implicit operator hybrid entity ref from entity this. So we're just like return hybrid entity ref from this. Oh, new. Okay, and here in the character hand, instead of the entity, we're saying hybrid entity ref. We're getting back to Unity. And it should display something, I think. Operator cannot be applied to parents. Where? Oh, okay. Hybrid entity ref. Because we need to make it the null. Alright. Hold on, null. Like that. I mean, we should be able to maybe do something like that. Or maybe here. Let's take it, the hybrid entity ref. So this has this isn't null, and this value, otherwise null. What's wrong? I have conditional expression can be done because there's no explicit conversion between hybrid entity ref and okay, because we need to access like that between entity and null. Okay. Okay. Transform. Yeah, so it's working right now. Maybe we can just type like that. Yeah, it's perfect. Oh, it's not perfect. What's wrong? Cannot convert from hybrid entity ref to it wouldn't differ much from just accessing the point dot value, so I think we'll do it anyway like that. Yeah, it's working. Okay. And will it be displayed in the editor? It's not, because I made one mistake. Since hybrid entity ref, we ought to make it serializable, and it can be read only. Because it's, or maybe we can make it private and yes, so serialize Unity Engine serialize field. Will it work like that? Let's check the debug. Oh, it's not working. Hybrid component. Wait a second, it's serializable. Or maybe need to make it public. So serialized field is most probably working only in the components. So in debug, still not showing up. What have I done? Oh, I don't want it. It's serializable. Can just end it. So it's no. Maybe it needs to be public. Yeah, most probably. Let's create, just for purpose of testing, the test.cs struct test public integer x. Hello, Jakub. I'm doing it in English, by the way, so I'm forced to not speak in Polish to you. But I'm glad to see you there. Let's character hand test. And will it show up here? It's still not showing up. Maybe this system serializable. Okay, it's here. How are you doing, Jakub? Entity ref, hybrid entity. What's that? It's mono behavior. So it needs to be serializable. Maybe we need to make it like that. So public entity as well. I don't know. Okay, that's good. Maybe it's complaining about this property. What if we add the system non-serialized to those properties into this property? It's still not working. Let's create a copy so we can just do some tests with that. Because I don't want to break code inside of the here, since it won't compile if I change something, an experiment. Oh, it's because of this question mark. So hold object. So we need to handle the null references here. Okay. So it can be like that. And so this entity is null and hybrid entity, or maybe, yeah, I think this is good. It's null and this hybrid entity is null. Okay, this is all right. I don't want it like that. Entity just can be null. I think that would be our way to go for handling the null references. So hybrid entity ref here. I don't think I need this anymore. And null serialized. Okay, let's check. There's some problem. Okay, so if hell object is null, seem to access the value. Hold object ref. Let's just type ref and $. Okay. Reference volume. So we need to most probably keep it consistent. So, well, it can be like that. You can't do it like that. So we would need to just type dot value to access the reference. And it's here. So held object ref. And we don't need it anymore. So I can just drag the weapon here, or I can, just hybrid entity. All right, hybrid entity. And let's see, because right now it should work. So one thing left for us would be to, the entity does not exist. Okay, one thing left for us would be to take the, may create a property jar, but it's not working. Hybrid object, is the ref a struct? Yeah, it's a struct. It's a struct because I don't want to create a class, as classes are not as lightweight as structures, so they are kind of a better way for optimization of our game. And it's written in a kind of a mutable way because I need for it to work with in the editor. So I chose just struct because I wanted for it to be lightweight. So what's that? The entity does not exist. And we were doing it too soon. Too early. curly. But then you're comparing it to null. No, I was, but I changed my mind. I'm comparing the value of this reference. Isn't there like a has value for it? Yeah, it's. I mean, when I was using the non or label structure, then I just checked it through the null. But yeah, most probably I should use just has value. It's much more nicer syntax. But right now I'm using the value. I'm not. I mean, the hold object reference can be empty, but the empty is kind of a value of this entity ref, because so it's still some kind of a instance of the structure. So yeah, the reference can be null, can be empty. The issue is that the entities does not exist. We have some complaints here. Hold object ref. Let's try to write down debug log. What is this entity? And we'll see how the Unity stores the entity or prints the debug with the entity. So it's null, entity null. So what's going on? I mean, hybrid entity ref. This entity, this hybrid entity. If entity is null, it's a structure, so how can I compare it to null? What's going on here? Maybe I should do like if it's entity null. Or maybe default entity. Because when we're initializing the structure, the initial value of the entity is default entity. This hybrid entity isn't null. So then this entity becomes this hybrid entity. Yeah, let's see. So maybe we were just failing to entity does not, where does SR come from? Transform here. Hold object ref value. And here we should just compare it to entity null. Yeah, let's see. Okay, it's working, but we have some weird stuff right now. Most probably because this is the mesh collider. Yes, mesh collider. So, but by the way, it's working, so we've done it. Let's just change it to trigger. Alright. And we have the weapon for our character. Now it just needs some adjustments in the holding point. So let's, oh, not like that. Let's edit that one in the play mode. Okay. Like that. And a little bit more inside. And maybe here. Okay. And now let's just copy this transform, paste values, and play. So yeah, we have our character wielding a weapon. Weapon is a separate entity, and player has the character hand component, which is pointing to hybrid entity. I never thought to use the step thing in Unity like that. That's genius. What do you mean step thing? What is a step thing? You mean that I'm moving the camera? Oh, the step thing. You mean the in the play mode? Yeah. I mean, perfectly. It would be good to if Unity would force to re-render everything. Just hold the state and render the state as it is with the transform. Just modify get the changes from the transform component and modify like that. But yeah, when we are using the pause, it's not refreshing our positions in the renderer. So the step is a genius trick. Yeah. I think I learned it about 1 year ago or something like that, and it's very useful. Saves a lot of situations like that. Okay, we've got the entity, which is separate, and we have its sword, a weapon that is separate entity, and we have a character hand component that is simply attaching one of the some entity to our hand. All right, so let's move forward, and what I wanted to do is just create this property drawer for the hybrid entity ref. So I need to check the documentation how to do it. Unity property drawer. On the behavior, I think I'll just copy that. Editor and hybrid entity ref property drawer.cs. Oh, it's using UI elements. Looks great so far. Thanks, Bob. That's very good to hear. Visual element, create property GUI, create property name. Right, so it's almost doing what I want, except I like to have the hybrid entity, new property field, find property relative hybrid entity, and fills the container. And it should be that. Let's see. It's not working. Without left and right. Okay. Position in dragons. Maybe new property field. Maybe like that. I think the editor is not catching up. There's Oh, I need to. I'm doing the property drawer for the property drawer class, which is complete nonsense. So now it should work. Don't you? It's not working. The type of needs. Yeah, I just recognized that. Hybrid entity ref. What? How? What I'm doing wrong? Create a property fields. Position ingredients. Link UI elements. What's wrong with that? Maybe I misspelled this property. So entity ref, hybrid entity, find property relative. Hybrid entity. No object referenced. Let's try that one instead of this new approach with UI elements. Row label. Make chilled fields to be intended. Okay, that's great. Calculate rects. With position with hybrid entity. Right. Set back the indent level. Let's see. Okay, it's working. Can I set it to null, to none? And will it work on the runtime? Yeah, but it won't deattach this. But that's alright. I think we'll just need to do it like that. So if we are the property field, can we do it like manually? Property field, object field. Yep. So let's do like that. Editor, go object field. Position, so hybrid entity rect. Serialized property will be like object reference property field shows. Property find hybrid entity object fields field. Okay, so see ya, Jakub. Thanks for coming. Good night. So I need to get here value of our property value. Value. Get numerator serialized property. Serialized property get struct to struct. Propagate array element at index. Find property relative. Okay, so let's just use like that. So first of all, or maybe I mean it should be a reference some point value. Manage reference. What's that? It's just the object. I think we want it, so value as, and we can't use as, we need to use hybrid entity f. Okay, so we're casting. Using this looks to get access property of index. To get access. Objects. Let's try to find an object. Match whole word and case. So what I'm trying to do is just access this structure from here, so I can check whether so while the editor is playing, I would like to check this property. So I can just display what entity is currently used in this reference. No, maybe it's too much, but serialized property. Let's try to use the property. Or maybe not. Because it's all serialized and we can't use it as serialized. That's an issue. Maybe we can. So entity would be property get find property relative, and we want to access the entity. And yeah, try it like that. And with some debug log entity. And here delete. So you can be sure it's coming from the editor. Okay, so it's null right now. So we can indeed access it. I mean, if we drag the weapon here, it's still null. But what if we assign it like that? Hit play. It's still null. Serialized object, that's it. Serialized object this property belongs to. Let's write the serialized object. I think it would be just the character hand. The serialized object. Target object. Yeah, so it's player character hand. So let's do it like that. Component. And component. Now I'd like to get a property from this component. The name like serialized object name, target property target. What's the context? Let's get the property info. Field info. Can create like that. Reflection class. Type info. Oh, I know. We need to do like that. Property. Serialized object, target object. Target object. Get type. Field. Get field of name. Property. Name. Field info, and as we want to get hybrid entity ref, we just get value from component. And we should be able to print that. Yep, we got it. So right now, if we are inside of the play mode, so in the editor application is playing. So if we're playing, then we would like to display something different rather than in the editor mode. So here we will just want to, in editing mode, we'd like to display a field for a hybrid entity. And in the playing mode, we would like to additionally display the currently attached, currently referenced entity, at least the ID. So let's do like that. Oh, there's a label here, so we can use that label. Just to reuse the code, we do it like that. String label, object picker label. So here we'll say it's GUI content none. Okay, so it's a GUI content. GUI content, and it would be hybrid entity ref. And value as hybrid entity ref. I need to cast it. And we'll say let's display the value. Can convert from value index, and maybe just a string. And here we'll say it's GUI content none. And for applying the change in the runtime, we would need to just a bit modify this property. So if it's not null, then we're returning this hybrid entity, and otherwise we're just returning the entity. Not value entity. Let's change this name to entity, like that. Here to what? Instance mode. To keep it consistent. Okay. So let's see how it's working. While we're in the edit mode, it's working just like a standard reference property in Unity. When we hit play, it should display some additional text, but it's not displaying it. So let's see whether we is playing. I mean, it should be working, so the problem is we're not assigning it at all. So here, and we should be fine. So let's hit play. And as you can see, it's displaying the current reference to the entity. If I change it to none, it's assigning the entity null. If I change it to weapon, it's good. I wonder what if somewhere in the game we change this. So let's see. So after assigning it, let's say held object transform, hold object, ref. Oh, we shouldn't modify the like that. So, well, can we make it private? I mean, like that. System.serialize. Serializable. It's not only this question. It's in the engine serialize field. So just make it private. Let's see. Okay, it's working. And the issue is if I set something, set some entity. It won't respect that. I know how to test it. You'll see in a second what I mean. So, character hand and ref should be a new hybrid ref, and we'll say it's character hand held object value. So we'll like reassigning it right now, but we're creating a new structure when we have entity assigned, and the hybrid entity is null. But I'm wondering whether this drawer is creating a new struct and then assigning it, or it's keeping the existing struct and then assigning it. So we'll see in a moment. So what we should see right now, that it's took our hybrid entity and assigned it took our hybrid entity and reassigned it, but this time it is assigned in the entity field. And now if we disable the move character handheld system, and when we assign something like, I know, let's create multiple weapons for that. We need multiple weapons for that test. I mean 2. So here, for the purpose of testing, let's assign the red material to that. And at the beginning, it should follow with the default weapon. We go here, we disable this system, and we assign second weapon. Yeah, it's working. I mean, okay. Yeah, it's working. So if we're overriding the let's draw that. What's that? So we can have our reference. So we have our reference, and it could be either set by entity reference, hybrid entity hybrid entity reference, or by just by entity. And we can modify it from 2 places. So one is code, and second one is editor. So if we have a situation when it's in the hybrid entity reference, and we would like to have an entity, then it's good, because we are just setting up a new structure. We're not modifying an existing one. Okay. If we have entity, then it's also good, because we're just changing the reference. When we have the hybrid entity reference, and we change it to this one, it's okay. When we have hybrid entity reference and we're changing it to entity, hybrid entity reference to entity, it's good because the editor is applying a new struct, and as well from the entity, the editor is creating a new struct for the hybrid entity reference. So it's all good. Now, holding point and weapon. The second weapon. It's all working. So, it took long, but we made some first steps integrating this collision combat system. And we did a major step into creating a more advanced gameplay code, because we created the hybrid entity ref. So in our hybrid approach, we can finally use the references in components that are editor friendly. So it's because of this property drawer, which is doing cool stuff. Just wonder about one more thing. So if I set that out object ref here, save it, create a new scene, go back here, reload it. No, it's not that one. There's a scene called ECS. Oh, assets. What's wrong? Where's this? Let's see. Polygon starter scenes demo. Okay, it's here. And is it keeping? Yeah, it's keeping the reference for our hybrid entity. So when we're working in the editor, we can just fill the component data just like we are used to with our classic game object approach. And while it's in the play mode, we are displaying the current attached entity. And oh, I need to disable one line. Yeah, that one. So it's displaying the currently attached object, and we can just set another one. Ideally, it would be great to, if this entity is set from the code, so we don't have the reference for the hybrid entity. Ideally, it would be great to search for this hybrid entity just for editor purposes. So create some function that would search for all the hybrid entities and try to find that one with the entity. But yeah, maybe later. So it's all for tonight. I hope you enjoyed. So next time we'll start coding some real gameplay code instead of just trying to solve kind of our architecture problems in the ECS approach. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.